Hey, what's good? It's me, Lex, back at you with another Pathfinder video. Today I have the remastered version of my class tier list. This is something that I've wanted to do for a very long time. I wanted to get a little bit more into the design specifics of why I place each class in each tier. I wanted to be a little more nuanced in the tiers that I place them into, and I wanted to have a more concrete explanation for what exactly the tiers are supposed to represent. And I figured that with the release of Player Core 2 upcoming here, I got my copy a few days ago, and I've been experimenting almost constantly, running characters through example scenarios, building them, comparing them to the options we currently have available, etc. This would be as good a time as any, especially because Paizo has clarified that they do not intend to remaster any classes outside of those contained within the core books, which means that this information should stay relevant for a long time. That's my hope, and let's get right into it. I'm going to be explaining each of the tiers first. These descriptions are, of course, going to be somewhat loose. Don't take them perfectly as like an example of this tier has this reason listed, so all classes in the tier must follow that example. It's more of kind of placing them based on these as guidelines, using them as points. Starting off with D tier, a class that can find itself in D tier is a class that can find itself outclassed in its own archetype. And what I mean by archetype, if you want to go the most strict possible, the TTRPG space, the popular fantasy TTRPG space anyway, has kind of been built up onto this 4-player party with a magic man, a fighting man, a thief, and a cleric. So someone to be on the front lines and defend the party, that would be the fighting man. Someone to cast the utility and damaging magic, that would be the magic man. The person who is capable with a lot of tools and skills, that would be the thief, and the person who is capable of holy magic and specifically protecting or healing the party, and that would be the cleric. And so if your class is capable of just being outclassed by another one, then it's going to find itself in D tier. Secondly, a class in D tier does not need any special balancing attention. We're going to get into this as we get into the higher ranks, but certain classes, at least in my experience, require very particular balancing attention to be paid to them, or otherwise encounters could end up becoming far too easy. Ultimately, what's going to matter more than any individual character or class's contribution is, of course, your entire party composition and your teamwork. Pathfinder is very much a teamwork-oriented game, but if the class itself is capable of presenting some balancing changes or requiring a GM to adapt to it, then it's going to be ranked higher. And finally, in D tier, if you are capable of inconsistent contribution, you might find yourself in D tier. So if your class is capable of being built right and still failing to consistently provide for the rest of your party, like a full party member's worth of contribution to a team, or if it's possible to easily build a class quote-unquote wrong, not in that it's actually so much possible to build your class wrong, but in that if you can build your class in a way that makes it so that it is difficult for you to contribute, it can find itself in D tier. Moving up to C tier, the main difference between D and C is that C is going to be very solid in its archetype. It's going to be a good pick. It's going to be capable of outputting exactly what you want from it. Other than that, it's still not going to require any special balancing attention, and it's going to be capable of inconsistent contribution still. Up into B tier. B tier is where things are going to start getting really good in their archetypes. They're going to be very solid go-to examples. They're going to be providing things that other classes aren't really going to be able to provide in the same way. They still don't need any special balancing attention yet, but they are consistently capable of contributing. If you have a feature that makes it very, very easy, or even so much as, I would say, guaranteed, where you're going to be able to consistently contribute to your team, you're never going to be left behind, you'll find yourself in B tier. Up in A tier, we have if you excel in your archetype, if you are capable of being just a top tier contributor, that's going to be A tier. And as well, anything above B tier, so A, A+, and S, are all going to be possible of requiring special balancing attention. So maybe you can output immense amounts of damage very quickly. Maybe you can provide an immense amount of healing. Whatever it is, the GM might have to start designing encounters, taking into account what you're capable of, more so than the general idea of a GM should always be taking into account what their party is capable of. Additionally, A tier is consistently capable of contributing and inconsistently capable of excelling. And what I mean by excelling here is anything that is able to perform more or less beyond its means as a class, or beyond anything else in its archetype. Moving up into A+, this is more or less going to be the same as A, except that you are consistently capable not only of contributing, but of excelling. So, for example, if a class is really good, but only crazy good when it critically hits, that's going to be A tier. But if it is just always incredibly strong, that's A+. And finally, S tier, you're capable of, at least in some way, being the strongest in your archetype. And this is why earlier when I was explaining what archetypes were, I clarified that that definition was the most tight and rigid definition. I think that there are a lot more archetypes in Pathfinder 2nd edition than just those 4. And a lot of classes can excel over other classes in a whole variety of ways. As well as that, S-tier classes, if built correctly, rather than being capable of requiring special balancing attention, are going to require special balancing attention. These are classes that are so strong and capable in some way that you as the GM are going to have to keep them in the back of your mind. It's not going to be a question of if you should be trying to adjust encounters or building encounters for this player or this character. It's that you should be. Alrighty, and with those explanations out of the way, we're going to be starting off and going alphabetically from left to right. So the first class that I have here is Alchemist. And I'm also going to give a very brief description of what I mean by this little bar that I've drawn in front of you. This bar is meant to represent when someone is building a character and they're playing their character, as long as they aren't intentionally trying to build it poorly, the lowest point is going to be more or less the worst they can possibly contribute, and the top is going to be the most they can possibly contribute. And I will have a thicker bar somewhere in the middle to represent where I think the average player is going to fall on this spread. So, with Alchemist, they got a bunch of changes in Player Core 2. They have the ability to have consistent resources throughout the day, rely on their quick alchemy feature to create items on the fly. The durations of those items will be shorter, but the ability to continually utilize this gigantic list of items that they can possibly build up to within their formula book makes them absolute top tier contributors in their ability to kind of be the party's go-to for solving a whole lot of problems. They're a utility caster with weaker spells, more or less, and rather than spells, they're using alchemical items. I also have examples that I will be bringing up with each of these placements. These do not necessarily correlate with how strong the feature is, but more so they're points that I want to talk about. So the reason that I think that Alchemist is going to be minimally contributing just consistently and good in its archetype is because of the new versatile vials and quick bomber, quick alchemy features. I think that at absolute minimum, an alchemist is going to be able to be throwing alchemical bombs, imposing some effects, either throwing their versatile vials, maybe contributing with their field vials for healing, tossing on additives, and I think that the floor of what they can contribute is very, very high here. But ultimately, to push above the average player and their ability to use quick alchemy and their formula book to just take items from their list, they're going to have to learn the alchemical items list, and that's what's going to push them up into A+ tier and S tier. A lot of items are capable of being just incredibly, incredibly strong options, and it's going to take a lot of time and effort to learn all of that. And finally, I have this little star here to symbolize that I think they're best in class at a single thing. Specifically, I think that the new remastered Alchemist is going to be the absolute best at just general utility, even more so than a rogue who can have way more skill trainings, or an investigator who's really, really good at pursuing information and finding it out. The alchemist having the ability to create any item on their in their formula book at any time is just astounding. And I'm going to be disabling the examples as I go along to keep the tier list nice and clean. Next up is the Barbarian. The Barbarian got some very solid buffs in Player Core 2. I'll be talking about them with the examples, but I have them placed from minimally contributing in A tier, where they're inconsistently capable of excelling, all the way up to S tier. And I have them as best in slot with that little star there, for their sheer ability to both tank and output damage. A lot of people have been thinking for a long time that Barbarian is a glass cannon. I've never found that to be true. As soon as you get out of level 2, maybe 3, that hit point pool is going to start to balloon into a massive amount. And the amount of damage you're outputting means that you'll be drawing aggro just as well as a champion. As for specific examples, I think that the main reasons that they are now kind of minimally contributing to their team at A rank is because Rage in Player Core 2 no longer imposes an armor class penalty, so it is now just a straight damage bonus. They also gain the ability with the quick tempered free action, just a granted feature to Rage when they roll initiative. They have Furious Footfalls as well at, I believe, 3rd level, which gives them a speed bonus, and speed is very, very good in Pathfinder. And then as you push up into A+ and S tier, it's mainly going to be your choice of Instinct. A lot of them can contribute some amazing things now. Not that they didn't before, but even more so. Taking advantage of things like reactive strike, or setting up with your teammates to be able to make multiple strikes around, because your strikes as a barbarian are so incredibly, incredibly potent. If you're able to hit multiple times, you're going to be breaking encounters. And that's why I have them up in S tier here. And then finally, their Mighty Rage feature at level 11 got changed. This used to be free action rage on initiative. Now it doubles your rage bonus to damage on your first strike of an encounter, which is really, really astounding. And I think that the average Barbarian player is going to end up building a Barbarian at this point, either A+ or S tier. It's very, very hard to build a Barbarian that doesn't contribute, and ultimately getting the ability to hit more than once a round is going to be enough to push you up into S tier. Before the remaster, I probably would have said the average would have been A to A+, because you had to kind of consider your AC penalty a little bit. Even though you had a higher health pool, you would need something like heavy armor or a shield to kind of try and offset that penalty, especially if you were a giant barbarian, which is a very, very strong subclass. It makes you clumsy in addition. But now with basically every weakness that the barbarian had being removed, they're going to sit very high on the tier and be best in class for just straight up being on the front lines, dealing damage, and being an outstanding frontliner. Next up is Bard. Bard I have going from B tier, where they're consistently capable of contributing, all the way up to S tier, consistently capable of excelling. And I think that the average Bard player is probably going to find themselves somewhere in A+ tier. As for the specific examples, I think that a Bard is very, very hard to build poorly because of composition spells. Ultimately, what these games are is math, and Bards gain the ability to swing the math drastically in their party's favor at level 1, and it only gets stronger as they continue. And on top of that, they have full spell casting and a variety of muses that they can opt into for different play styles. Ultimately, being able to give your entire party even something as simple as a +1 is going to mean that your presence on your team is going to be felt, because Pathfinder is very much a teamwork-based game, and giving your whole party a +1 is, in a way, like a +4 bonus, just spread out. And then as you move up into A tier and A+ tier, there's going to be picking up more specialized and stronger options. Things like Dirge of Doom, which is perhaps the strongest, or one of the strongest Bard features that you can gain access to. Being able to frighten every enemy in a 30-foot emanation around you means that essentially those monsters are losing an entire level worth of potency. They don't lose their damage, they don't lose their hit points, they don't lose their spells, but they do lose a point of, their bonus in numbers over your party. And being able to drop that down is, in a way, going to debilitate them more than I think almost anything else will. I wanted to call out martial performance, but especially just in general, the muses that bards can have for being very, very strong, very unique, potent features. You can get things like the ability to recall knowledge on everything with bardic lore. You can get things like martial performance, where hitting a strike allows you to extend some of your compositions. And then finally, moving up into S tier, it's mainly going to continue to be the composition spells, being able to utilize the correct ones like Fortissimo Composition to just drastically swing encounters in your favor. Fortissimo Composition is a focus spell modifying one of your composition spells that allows you to increase the +1 bonus from things like Rallying and Courageous Anthem, all the way up to +2 or even +3, depending on a performance check that you make. And if you critically succeed and get that +3, whatever you're fighting is probably going to lose off of even a single one of those. Next up is, oh yes, I wanted to actually close out the Bard by saying that they are best in class as a supportive caster. They have the occult list, which means that they can buff and debuff, and then the ability to use their composition cantrips to always have an incredibly potent backup, and likely always up, is going to be just outstanding. Nothing can really compete with them in that space. All right, now next up is Champion, which is going to be finding itself capable of dropping all the way to C tier, but also capable of performing all the way up in S tier, and I think that the average player is going to find themselves in A+. Now, why do I think this? Specifically, I think that Champion is capable of dropping down into C tier, depending on your choice of cause. A lot of the quote-unquote evil clauses, now unholy clauses, in Player Core 2 have kind of received some benefits, specifically through new feats. Things like Smite is very strong. There are a lot of ways to increase your damage, but the general issue that these subclasses will face is still that Champion is not the greatest damage dealer, and if you're not using your Champion's reaction to protect your allies, then enemies are going to be disincentivized from attacking you because of your own high defenses. But even when you are playing some of those, you are capable of some amazing contribution, don't get me wrong. It's just that depending on the campaign, playstyle, and enemies you're facing, it can really struggle to contribute. But moving up into A and A+ tier, I think that the reason that most champions are going to be very, very strong and find themselves in A+ tier is because of champions' feats and shield block and reaction. Champion kind of pushes you as a player through the features that it grants you to wield a shield and use it regularly. It kind of emphasizes that you aren't about dealing damage, you're about mitigating damage, and mitigating damage in Pathfinder is very, very strong. Shields are capable of extending how much damage you can take immensely. You have very high armor class, and you have a lot of features that can bolster that for protecting your allies, drawing aggro towards you, and benefiting your whole party whenever you take some of these reactions. And then moving up into finally S tier, and what really pushes Champion over the edge is going to be, first of all, its own performance, of course, but especially what's solidifying its place in S tier rather than it kind of just pushing into it is going to be the Champion dedication. It got changed in Player Core 2, but only slightly. It no longer just grants all armor proficiency. It now grants light and medium, or heavy if you're already trained in both light and medium. But they did not change the fact that at level 6, any character with the Champion dedication can pick up the Champion's reaction as a archetype feat. And as I was saying before with Barbarian, what really pushes them into S tier is their ability to get 2 strikes off a turn. If they pick up the Champion dedication as a paladin, and they then pick up the Champion's reaction at level 6, they're going to be able to not only force enemies to attack them with their gigantic hit point pool, but give their allies resistance against the damage that's being prevented, and through Retributive Strike, hit the foe that was trying to attack anyone but the Barbarian. Champions received a lot of benefits, and I think they're more than capable of standing in S tier on their own with this little star here now as the best-in-class defender, but the dedication is still, it has to be called out as one of the strongest parts of the entire class. Being able to pick up things like Retributive Strike, Liberating Step on other classes, or even at this point, some of the unholy causes reactions. It's just very, very good on other classes as well. Next up is going to be Cleric. Cleric, I think, is going to be ranging from C tier, capable of inconsistent contribution, all the way up to S tier, where they require special balancing attention, and I think that most clerics are going to find themselves in A+ tier. So I think the reason that a cleric can find themselves as low as C tier is specifically your choice of divine font and your choice of spells. You're on the divine list, which means that in combination with a lot of your features, you're kind of being pushed towards more of a supportive healing role. And if you choose the harm font, I'm sorry to say, unless your party is fully comprised of, or just has at least a few people who benefit from undead healing, you're not going to be contributing everything you could as a cleric. Now, this isn't to say that harm isn't a good spell when used offensively. Being able to use 3 harms in a row to do an immense amount of damage is something I've seen, something I've done. It's very, very fun, very, very cool. But the biggest issue is that that is also very inefficient for your resources. You're using 3 spells in a single turn to do maybe a bit more damage than a Barbarian could do. And ultimately, that's just not your best use of your Divine Font. You're going to want to be picking up the Heal Font. But as we move up through B into A+, that's going to be where people who have chosen the Healing Font, or at least some mixed font, and are taking into account the fact that as a cleric, they're very, very good at healing. At this point, it's mostly going to depend on what kind of spells you're picking, what your doctrine is, because you can contribute as a war priest by being a body on the front line, capable of healing yourself and others, using some special feats like cast down to knock enemies prone. Generally, though, the strongest part of cleric is going to still be that Divine Font, the ability to have anywhere from 4 to 6 maximum rank heals per day in addition to your normal spell list, and then being able to take feats that allow those to be used as well to counteract afflictions and conditions. Cleric is going to simply be an absolutely astounding supportive class. I will say though, since Player Core 2, Cleric has actually lost their gold star as a best-in-class support character. They definitely have more support in a single combat, where they are capable of outputting, 6 maximum rank heals, and then more at 9th and 8th and out of their 10th rank slots. They're going to be incredibly, incredibly potent, and this isn't to knock the class in general, but the new Alchemist having the regenerating resources and being capable of delivering more healing than a cleric. If you are a chirurgeon and you use the combine elixir additive to combine together 2 maximum rank elixirs of life, you can actually out-heal the heal spells from a cleric. And you get those resources back. And so it's kind of a tie between them, I would say, where it's more of a trade-off thing, where the Alchemist is more capable of contributing across the entire course of a day. A cleric is going to be far more capable of contributing within a single encounter as far as healing goes. Other than that, it's just the fact that you are a full spellcaster. Cleric is going to find a lot of benefit in that. And most casters are going to be incredibly capable of contribution to their team. Next up is Druid. I think Druid ranges from D tier, where it is outclassed in its archetype, all the way up to A tier, where it is inconsistently capable of excelling. And I think that the average Druid build is going to find itself in B tier. As for why? Druid is a primal spellcaster. The primal list is a pretty good list, very solid one. But ultimately it's going to be up to your spell choices to pull you out of D tier. The main thing is that if a class doesn't have a specific feature to keep it out of D tier, and it's a spellcasting class, then it's going to be capable of landing itself there. If you pick your spells poorly, then you're going to struggle to contribute, and that's just going to unfortunately be the case. But the reason that I think that most Druids are going to find themselves up in B tier are things like their defenses. They have medium armor proficiency, they have 8 hit points per level, they have the shield block general feat, and their Druidic orders can give them access to some very solid focus spells for continual contribution throughout the day. The biggest thing with Druid, and the reason that it is thus far the only one to not break into S tier, is that Druid doesn't have a whole lot it can do that other classes can't. It's very good at what it does. It's a very solid contender. It's still a spellcasting class, but ultimately, if you're going to build it, it's going to be doing a lot of things very well and not one thing incredibly. Next up is Fighter. Fighter is going to be landing itself anywhere from B tier for being consistently capable of contributing, all the way up into S tier for requiring special balancing attention. And specifically, the reason that I think that a fighter is going to find themselves struggling to do anything more than anything less than consistently contribute boils down to the fact that they start off the game with the reactive strike feat, and their attacks scale faster than other classes. You're going to hit consistently, and you have one of, if not the strongest feats in the entire game, reactive strike. It just allows you to lock creatures down, get extra attacks off, and play in a completely different way than classes without it are capable of doing. And as you push up into A+ and S tier, it's going to be specific builds carrying you, like a fighter utilizing the slam down feat to be able to, with 2 actions, hit something and then attempt to trip it and eventually just start knocking it down automatically when they hit. And then using their reactive strike to hit it again as it stands back up. Maybe they have the flail weapon group, and if they critically hit, they can knock the creature back down again, over and over. Tossing on things like a phantasmal doorknob, so that whenever you critically hit the creature, you blind them, etc. It's a very, very strong class. It does what it does. It does it very well. Fighter is a very good chassis, but I think that generally speaking, it's going to excel only based on particular feat choices and not its base chassis. Its base chassis is very good at making it contribute, but not very good at making it excel without extra steps. Next up is Gunslinger, who is going to find itself in basically the same situation as Fighter, but a little bit of a wider range. I think that Gunslinger is going to range from C tier, where they're capable of inconsistently contributing to their team, all the way up to S tier, where they can require special balancing attention. And I think most Gunslingers are going to find themselves in the A to B range, where they're either going to be excelling inconsistently, or at least still contributing very consistently. And the reason that I think this is because you have your accelerated proficiency with singular expertise. That's going to mean that you're going to hit more, you're going to crit more. Your Gunslinger's Way provides an immense amount of action compression, as do a lot of your feats, very, very fun feats, so that you can take advantage of reload weapons in ways that no other class really can, and you can form specialized playstyles depending on your way that excel in different combat scenarios as well. What's going to be dragging them all the way down to C tier, capable of inconsistent contribution, is going to be the fact that they're using guns. Guns have the fatal trait. Guns are difficult to play with if you're not properly supported in them, either by yourself or by your team, because they underperform unless you land a critical hit. And then if you do land a critical hit, that fatal trait is going to swing you all the way up into A+ tier, where you're excelling. And then finally, the thing that really pushes it up into A+ and S tier is going to be specific playstyles, specific feats, things like Fake Out, things like Spell Shot, which got a change recently. It's always been very good, in my opinion. The ability to their Ways reload allows them to reload and recall knowledge as a single action, which is incredible for being able to gain info on the battlefield. I think that a lot of people undervalue information, or are in games where, unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately, for better or for worse, their game master isn't necessarily taking into account the information game. And as such, the options such as Investigator or the Spell Shot Gunslinger kind of lacked behind what they were intended to in their design. But generally, I think Gunslinger is going to be landing very solidly like so. Once you hit a critical shot for upwards of 150, 200 damage, you're never going to want to go back. Next up is Inventor. Inventor is going to be landing itself anywhere from D tier for being capable of being outclassed in its archetype, all the way up to A tier where it's inconsistently capable of excelling. And I think that the average Inventor build is going to find itself in B tier. And I think this specifically because, and I have both at the top and the bottom here, the unstable trait is the big thing that kills Inventor, in my opinion. Inventor is capable as a martial class of outputting spell-like effects, but only offensive spell-like effects, using their unstable actions. Things like Gigavolt, Explode, etc. are very, very potent options that they have access to, but if you build too strongly into them, and if you don't utilize them at the right time, Inventor is going to find itself lacking, because that unstable check, DC 15, whenever you use an unstable action, if you fail, you cannot use unstable actions again. Just for the rest of combat, you need to repair your items before you can use them again. Means that despite the actions themselves pushing all the way up into A tier, and even probably A+, where they would be consistently excellent options, the fact that they're so inconsistent with that unstable flat check means that Inventor is going to have this spread kind of dragged down like that. Other than that, though, they have options like Overdrive, which alongside their offensive boost is giving them a large amount of damage boost. This is similar to Barbarian, more or less adjacent to Barbarian, but just weaker. Barbarian gets to do more damage, has more health, and has higher combat statistics because the Inventor is a intelligence-focused class. And then your innovation is honestly not greatest contributor to your options as an Inventor. Being able to add a few traits to a weapon, being able to take advantage of some unique actions with armor, being able to get a stronger companion. These are all very solid features, don't get me wrong, but they are not going to be carrying the class any higher than where they are at. Next up is Investigator. Investigator is going to range from B tier, where you're consistently capable of contributing, all the way up to S tier, where you are consistently capable of excelling. And the reason that I think all of this is after the changes in Player Core 2 especially, but before as well if you had a competent game master, Investigator was very, very capable of utilizing their pursue a lead and clue in and devise a stratagem features to gain immense amounts of information, just general bonuses to a bunch of things, and kind of plan their turns ahead of time and take full advantage of the 3-action system in a way that no other class can really wrestle. And that has only gotten easier now with the remaster. If you haven't seen, their pursue a lead got changed from pursuing a lead on a clue and then anything related to it you get some bonuses against, to now when you pursue a lead on a clue, the GM works with you to create an appropriate question for your investigation. So for example, if I saw a missing painting from the wall, I could ask, what happened to the painting that was here? And then anything that is related to or could get me closer to answering that question, I get bonuses for. And that's very, very strong. It's very wide now in its concept. A lot of the methodologies of the Investigator as well have gotten some minor tune-ups. And ultimately, I think what brings most Investigators into B tier, where they're only consistently capable of contributing, is that to really maximize the class's capabilities, push them up into A+, and S, you need to be willing to and capable of utilizing your features in very precise ways. Being able to use your device's stratagem to save on actions, have basically turns planned, and if they aren't going to go correctly with your device's stratagem, you get to pivot and save yourself those actions, use them on other things, which means that it's going to require a lot of game knowledge of skill actions, and particularly consumables, I think, are very important for Investigator. Because you are able to tell what your result will be on something before you do it, you are very, very capable of holding back on resources and using them only when they would be incredibly potent. Investigator gets a gold star for being best in class at gaining information. No one else can even come close. Neither the rogue, nor the alchemist, nor any of the other intelligence classes, no bard with bardic lore, there we go, and no thaumaturge with esoteric lore are going to be as capable of you as using a class feature and just getting information as you do it. There are specific situations in which other classes can excel at gaining information in different, more niche ways. So, for example, like a Thaumaturge being able to use diverse lore to recall knowledge specifically on things means that they might get more specific context about pieces that they find. But as an investigator, you are going to be guided straight to things, and your Pursue a Lead bonus is going to be giving you bonuses to all kinds of checks the whole way. Next up is Kineticist. Kineticist is going to be ranging from B tier for being consistently capable of contributing, all the way up to S tier, where you are consistently capable of excelling. Kineticist is kind of in its own field here, more than any of these other classes, because though the Alchemist is somewhat comparable, Kineticist is currently, I would say, the only class that is capable of just constantly outputting full-on spell effects. They have a very limited list of what spell effects they can replicate, but being able to consistently output spell effects means that I think most Kineticists are going to land themselves in A+ tier. As for specifics, the reason that I think that their floor is so high here at B tier is just because their key attribute being Constitution means that even barring your ability to function dealing damage and taking advantage of your resources, you're going to be a very, very solid body on the front line, a good target for healing and taking damage. And then as we move up into A+ tier, where I think most Kineticists are going to find themselves, it's going to be things like your kinetic gate and your choice of kinetic element. Specifically, you pick up things like fire, you do a lot of damage. You pick up wood, you're preventing a lot of damage and supporting your team. You pick up earth, you're capable of shaping the world and doing some solid damage, being defensive. You pick up water, you're capable of support and control. Going into your gate's threshold at 5th level, 9th level, so on, being able to pick up aura junctions, things like that, is going to even further kind of diversify what you're capable of doing with your actions. When you use a 2-action impulse, being able to move someone 5 feet with water impulses is going to open up a lot of things. Being able to move half your speed with air basically defines the mono element of air as a mobility class. Your choices of impulses are really going to make or break your Kineticist, but I have found that for every Kineticist except for Ferrokineticist, if you are building the mono element, you more or less have enough feat slots to get so many options that you're going to struggle to do anything less than contribute and excel. And there are standout examples of things that are very, very strong, like Timber Sentinel, which just replicates a maximum rank spell and gives you the ability to mitigate anywhere from 10 to 100 damage every single turn. Cyclonic Ascent, giving yourself or your entire party stronger flight at all times. Rising Hurricane, which is a composite impulse with a gigantic area of effect that allows you to rise enemies up into the air and then drop them down for immense damage and knocking them prone as they take falling damage. Kineticist is capable of incredible contribution to their team, and the only time they're really going to struggle is if you're going into a situation where their element is being counteracted in some way. If you're a pyrokineticist, you're going to struggle on the plane of fire. But other than that, you're going to be a very, very solid contributor to your team. And they also have a gold star for basically defining their own category in being a resourceless caster. Next up is the Magus. I think that the Magus ranges from C tier, where they're capable of inconsistent contribution, all the way up to A+ tier, where they can require special balancing attention. Although I think that the majority of Magi are going to find themselves either in A or B tier. Specifically, what makes me think all of these things is that the Magus, their biggest issue, the thing that they struggle with the most, is their action economy and the manipulate trait. If you go up against anything that can reactive strike you, you're not going to be able to utilize your most potent class feature, and that can cause a lot of issues if you aren't able to shore that up in other ways. Your hybrid studies vary a lot and can do some amazing things for you. Being able to attack from range with Starlit Span, being able to move around and do more damage with Laughing Shadow. Sparkling Targe is also very, very strong. Being able to both strike and raise a shield with your Conflux spell is incredible action compression. Spell Strike itself is going to be doing immense damage, and if you can land it, is going to possibly require special balancing attention all by itself, with the GM maybe having to inflate health pools if you have, say, a Magus and a Barbarian on the same team to prevent enemies from dying on round 1 or 2. And ultimately, what's going to separate a good Magus from a bad Magus is going to be your ability to utilize scrolls. This is more or less the case for every caster that does not have a large amount of spell slots, is that your strongest utility as a caster is going to be your ability to cast spells from scrolls or consistently cast them. You have a bit more pressure on your gold budget as a Magus because you still have to be upgrading a weapon, unlike some other less potent casters. But as long as you can still fulfill a utility role for your party by shoring up your weaknesses when you're, say, not capable of engaging in melee combat, or making up for your low amount of spell slots per day, then you're going to be doing some great things with a Magus. Next up is the Monk. The Monk is going to range from B tier, where it is consistently capable of contributing, all the way up to S tier, where it is going to be consistently capable of excelling. And I think most monks are going to find themselves in B tier. Specifically, the reason that I think this is Monk has one of the most potent action compression features in the entire game, Flurry of Blows. The ability to strike twice for a single action once per round just opens up so much that you can do with a Monk. And what's going to divide the rest of the monks from the very, very good ones is going to be your ability to fill those last 2 actions, whether it's with spells, skill actions, various types of support for you or your teammates, using consumables, etc. That's going to push you all the way up into S tier on itself. And then I have a few as well, just special callouts for some very potent feat choices that can make or break a monk. Things like Stumbling Stance and Stumbling Feint. This is basically everything you could want out of a monk's combat ability. It's D8 finesse backstabbing attacks, and Stumbling Feint lets you feint before you attack, and then the enemy becomes off guard to the entire flurry of blows. and things like Wolf Drag, which is the same thing with the Fighter, where you had the ability to hit and knock down a creature, but it's 4 levels earlier. Very, very strong features on Monk. It's a very good class. There's not a whole lot to say about it because the intricacies of Monk are more in how you build it than in the class itself. But it's a very, very solid frontliner. That's all about I have to say on that. And it gets a gold star for best in class at being kind of utility on the front line. Having that wide berth of actions, even though they don't have a lot of skill feats or skill increases, means that they're going to be able to run around, especially with their improved speed as well, and contribute a lot to their party. They have good armor class because of their armor proficiency being accelerated in unarmored as well. Monk is very, very good. Moving on to Oracle. Oracle is going to be ranging from D tier for being able to be outclassed in its archetype, all the way up to A tier for being inconsistently capable of excelling. Oracle recently got a rework in Player Core 2 with their Oracular Curse no longer having trade-offs, instead just being a straight penalty. Their granted focus spells have been kind of shifted over to curse-bound feats. Although they remain as focus spells, their curse-bound feats are now what advance their curse and make it worse. And these curse-bound feats are supposed to be incredibly strong features that the Oracle can take advantage of, trading their ability as a class with their curse debilitating them for momentary bursts of immense power. I think that most oracles are going to find themselves in the C to B tier range, specifically because they have 4 spells per rank per day now, which is a lot of spells, even if it is on the divine list without some kind of special ability to kind of make that list more potent, like the Cleric gets with their font, or like the Sorcerer gets when we get to it. Ultimately, Oracle struggles now with the fact that their curse-bound actions are not actually that good, and the ones that are good are very easily grabbable with the Oracle Dedication, which is going to be what drags the Oracle up into A tier here. The ability for other classes to grab some of their curse-bound feats very easily, such as there's a level 1 feature where as an action with the curse-bound trait, you can designate a creature within 60 feet and automatically know all of their weaknesses and their lowest save. And all that will do, depending on your choice of mystery, is give you some very, very small penalties to some of your statistics by advancing your curse. Oracle struggles a lot with the fact that it has a very good framework ready to receive an amazing class, but it does not have the content within that class to excel anymore. Oracle before, I think, was capable of reaching something even up into A+ or S tier, where it could do something very unique depending on the build. But now I think they're kind of limited by what their curse-bound actions are capable of contributing. Their focus spells, though decent, have never been the strongest. And Oracle is unfortunately going to find itself kind of struggling to compete after the release of Player Core 2. Next up is the Psychic. Psychic is going to range from B tier, where you are consistently capable of contributing, all the way up to A+ tier, where you are consistently capable of excelling. And I think that the average Psychic character is going to find themselves in A or B. Generally speaking, the reasoning behind this is going to be that Psychic has access to Unleash Psyche and their Psi cantrips and amps. They have stronger cantrips that they can amp with their accelerated focus points to do immensely potent attacks, and it combines with their Unleash Psyche, which gives them damage bonuses for a few rounds in combat. to mean that Psychic is going to be able to, without using any resources, be very capable of outputting immense damage as a caster. And ultimately what's going to be pushing you from this average A to B into an A+ is going to be proper utilization of your spell casting and scrolls to kind of stretch out the fact that you have less spell slots than the average caster. That's about their only weakness, is that they do not have as much versatility in their spells as other casters do. And what they gain for that is a whole lot of consistency with their focus spells. Next up is going to be Ranger. Ranger is going to go from B tier for being consistently capable of contributing to S tier, where they're going to be the strongest in their archetype. And I think that most Ranger players are going to find themselves in A or B tier. Specifically, I think this because of the various combination of features that the Ranger got. The ability to hunt prey and gain bonuses against them for various skill checks, but also being able to take advantage of some feats, and your hunter's edge is very, very good. A lot of the potency of Ranger comes from the fact that you're trading sheer numbers that a fighter would get for more particular benefits that the Ranger has, and being able to effectively utilize a animal companion is, I would say, probably one of the most important parts of the Ranger class, or find some other way around it, like the Snarecrafter dedication, which has been changed in Player Core 2 to specifically call out the Ranger as being able to utilize it with their survival proficiency rather than crafting. And the Snarecrafter dedication itself has gotten some major bonuses. So now if you're in a stationary location, a Ranger can do a lot. Really what's going to push you up into S tier is going to be some specific builds, like utilizing Flurry with maneuvers to be able to grapple very effectively, or Outwit to be very good tank. And what's going to earn them their gold star up here is going to be the fact that they have a lot of features that call out natural terrain and give you bonuses in natural terrain specifically. They're unbeatable within natural terrain as far as what you can get out of a class, even more so than Druid. Next up is Rogue. Rogue is going to range from B tier for being consistently capable of contributing all the way up to S tier for being consistently capable of excelling. And I think that most rogues are going to find themselves in A tier. As for specific examples of why, I think that the base for Rogue is set pretty high by things like their saving throws and their sneak attack feature. They do a good amount of damage. They are incredibly hard to take out with anything other than just direct attacks. And their biggest weakness is going to be the fact that because their damage bonuses are from sneak attack, which is precision damage, if they run into something like an ooze, they are going to struggle, or even a ghost. They have other features, dragging them up through the ranks into some consistent or inconsistent excelling, like Debilitating Strike, the ability to just do very continual debuffs as you hit enemies. As a martial character means that you're going to be contributing in ways that a lot of martials can't. Having more skill increases and skill feats, just like the Investigator, means that you're going to be able to compete with them in some ways by being charismatic or intelligent or otherwise capable of doing a lot of things. You'll have a lot of options. And then moving up into S tier, it's going to be just some specific builds or feat choices, things like Gang Up, which is a very, very, very strong rogue feat. It is a level 6 rogue feature where if a creature is within your and an ally's reach, it's off guard to both of you. And that applies to all of your allies and every enemy within your reach. Very, very good. and Rogue is going to be pulling a gold star for being the strongest information-based combatant. More than likely, it's going to be, or not information-based, sorry, skill-based combatant. Having all of those skill increases, having a lot of potency in protecting yourself because of your saves and your just general ability to branch out into various choices as a class makes you very, very strong. Next up is the Sorcerer, which is going to find itself ranging anywhere from B tier, where it's consistently capable of contributing, all the way up to S tier, where it can be the strongest in its archetype. As for specifically why, Sorcerer, it's very, very simple. With Player Core 2, Sorcerer has gained the Sorceress Potency feature, which gives them what used to be the Dangerous Sorcery feat, but it applies to all of your spells, and it applies to all of your healing as well. And you gain it as a level 1 feature. It's very, very strong, and alongside having 4 spells per rank per day, means that really the only thing that's gonna be dragging you down into something like B tier is going to be if your spell choice is very poor, but because you have so much support between that and your Bloodlines granted spells, which are going to guarantee that you're getting some good spells and some good focus spells, and because everything is going to be boosting everything else more or less, I think that most sorcerers are going to find themselves in A tier or A plus tier. I wanted to call out specifically, there is a new Bloodline granted spell for Imperial Sorcerer called Ancestral Memories. This allows you to, just without any check as an action and a focus point, gain a +1 status bonus to your next spell attack roll, or impose a -1 status penalty to the next saving throw that a creature attempts against a spell you cast before the end of your turn, and this heightens at 9th level and at 15th level to +2 and +3, or -2 and -3 respectively. This is essentially a better version of potency runes on your spell saves as a focus spell. It's very, very strong. That isn't to say that Imperial or even that focus spell are the strongest things you can do with a sorcerer. For example, you could take something like the Elemental Sorcerer and gain bonuses to your spells, your Bloodline spells, equal to what a Psychic would be getting out of their Unleashed Psyche. You'll be expending resources as a Psychic unless you're using your focus spells to do that, but it's still going to be very, very strong as a class and as a feature, and allow you to get this gold star for being more or less the best caster as far as just straight, if you want to cast Fireball, if you want to cast Blazing Bolt, etc. Sorcerer is probably what you want to play. And now with Sorceress Potency applying to healing as well, this is part of why Oracle can't contribute above an A and why they can find themselves as low as in D tier. As another 4-slot Divine caster, Sorcerer can just find themselves outperforming what an Oracle is capable of doing, because their features, I think, generally are going to outperform the curse-bound actions of the Oracle. And one final thing to note is that Ancestral Memories can be picked up by any other character through the archetype, as long as you have +2 in Charisma by level 4. So if you have a caster and you would like to be able to kind of pierce through the defenses of some higher level creatures, or just absolutely debilitate some lower level ones, this might be a good pick for you. Moving on, we have Summoner, who is going to be ranging anywhere from C tier for being capable of inconsistent contribution and just being good in their archetype, all the way up to A+ tier for being able to require special balancing attention and excel in their archetype. And I think that most summoners are going to find themselves between B or C tier. And specifically why I think this is Summoner has some very weak spell casting. Their DCs scale slower, they have less spells. So you're going to need to be taking advantage of scrolls to kind of supplement that as far as being the caster in your group goes. Eidolon I have placed both in B tier and in A+ tier because when combined with Act Together, which is in my opinion one of the best designed abilities in the entire game, right up there alongside Devise a Stratagem and Pursue a Lead, Act Together essentially gives you a 4th action per turn, but does it in a way that prevents you from using two action abilities. So you can't both cast a spell and get your Eidolon to use a special 2-action maneuver. But it means that you're getting a lot of potency out of your turns just in surely being able to do so many things. And it really helps when you're trying to control 2 characters at once without it just being a companion that you're commanding. But specifically what brings a summoner up into A and A+ tier is when you start considering your Eidolon a little more and you have a more intricate understanding of the game's mechanics and realize that the Eidolon existing lets you basically be your own ally. A lot of features in this game say that you can only affect your allies, and for good reason. Things like the aid action, you can only aid your allies, not yourself, because it's capable of giving you incredibly potent benefits, a +1 to +4 on associated checks. And with an Eidolon, you gain the ability to aid your own strikes effectively. You can have some very, very potent turns. You can get, when you take that into account, as long as you're able to consistently aid, attack benefits higher than a fighter is capable of at many, many levels. And especially when you combine in your spell casting. And the other thing to note is that because you are able to essentially be your own ally by utilizing your Eidolon, things like some summoner feats, the skilled partner feat, I believe it's called, and taking advantage of skill actions is also very, very good. You can essentially benefit from twice as many battle medicines because you can battle medicine yourself, you can battle medicine your Eidolon. Your Eidolon, then, if you have the skilled partner feat, can battle medicine itself and can battle medicine you. So you can quadruple the amount of battle medicines you can do to yourself and the amount of battle medicine you can I'm saying that so many times, it's ridiculous. Receive from your teammates is doubled as well. That's just the go-to example for me about how being able to treat yourself as your own ally, essentially here, is so, so good. Summoner is capable of some amazing contribution, and really the only thing keeping them back from S tier is that their chassis just doesn't have the potency built into it to actually get them up there, even though they have a lot of benefits in other situations, and I think they're more than capable of outperforming the average build of a lot of other classes. Next up is the Swashbuckler. Swashbuckler is going to range from C tier, where it's capable of inconsistent contribution, all the way up to A+ tier for being just absolutely excelling in its archetype. Swashbuckler is kind of this in-between of rogue and fighter, where it's trading a lot of the skill focus of the rogue, or rather I should say the skill diversity of the rogue for more combat capability. I think most Swashbucklers are going to find themselves in B tier. The biggest thing with Swashbuckler is that it's very fun to play. It gives a lot of dynamic gameplay, and while they do not have the skill diversity that a rogue has, they have skill potency with things like automatic increases that they can apply to some of their skills. Swashbuckler is ultimately going to find itself being able to pull down into C tier because a lot of their damage comes from precision. They don't have much in the way of bonuses outside of that, which means that if they go up against an ooze or an incorporeal undead, they can really, really struggle. Precise Strike is a very good damage bonus feature. As in Player Core 2, It just gives you a bonus to your damage, precision, and also governs how much you gain when you use a finisher move. Swashbuckler is going to be capable of some amazing stuff by utilizing skill actions and the actions defined in their style as well. And so they're able to push up into here with some good game knowledge. The Swashbuckler styles allow you to use skill actions, which are already very potent actions, in unique and powerful ways. And when combined with the new Bravado trait, which means that even on a failure, you will be gaining panache until the end of your next turn, and thus be very capable of utilizing finishers very consistently. Swashbuckler is going to be outputting a very large amount of damage, and doing it while being very capable of a very focused set of skill actions. Next up is Thaumaturge. Thaumaturge is going to range all the way from D tier, where it's outclassed in its archetype, all the way up to S tier, where it is the strongest in its archetype. And I think that the average swashbucklers are going to find themselves in, Thaumaturges are going to find themselves in A and B tier. Specifically, why I think this is because, well, I'll go over the D and S tier first. Your implement is really what's going to define you as a Thaumaturge. Your choice of implement kind of defines, at least to a certain extent, your playstyle. For example, if you pick up the wand implement, that is one of, if not the weakest implements you have available to you. It is a cantrip that can get boosted up to about the potency of a focus spell, but your class DC does not scale as well as a spellcaster's spell casting DC does, and there are just better things you could be doing that take advantage of some of your other features that make things like wand not as appealing and can bring you all the way down to just outclassed in your archetype. You might as well just play a spellcaster. But dragging you all the way up into B and A tier is going to be your esoteric lore, exploit vulnerability, and implements empowerment features. Esoteric lore just gives you unparalleled access to information about creatures, and when combined with various feats, like specifically diverse lore, these can give you some of the best information gathering abilities in the game. Very different from Investigator, where Investigator kind of gets their knowledge automatically and is more about guaranteeing stuff will happen. Esoteric lore is more about if you can find the clues to begin with, you're able to kind of nail them down and guarantee more information at that point. And then specifically between exploit vulnerability and implements empowerment, despite the fact that the Thaumaturge is forced to use a one-handed weapon, they're doing damage that is comparable to, or at some points even exceeds that of a Barbarian. And so ultimately you're left feeling kind of like a glass cannon version of a Barbarian in some ways, where you're doing this absolutely immense damage. And you have a lot of access to information as well, but you're not able to take damage as well. A lot of the actions from your implement are going to be make or break for Thaumaturge. The weapon implement, for example, has an incredibly potent feature, implements interruption, where you react to basically any action that isn't a step or something that doesn't have traits. And if you critically hit, you interrupt it no matter what it is. Very, very strong feature. Or things like the torch, which is essentially, as long as you're holding it, you are searching around you automatically, but also immediately. Whereas usually searching a room, if your exploration activity was search, would take upwards of 10 or so minutes to walk around prodding everything. Your torch just automatically is going to find things for you as you're walking around. And it allows you to, if you're also searching, kind of double up on those checks. It's very, very, very good. And then the Thaumaturge feats are going to be what push them up into S tier. and they get a gold star for, again, that kind of standalone excellence in their ability to gain on-the-spot information, and also generally for how wide of a berth they can create within their class, as far as you could have a tome and wand Thaumaturge who's in the back getting a lot of information and taking advantage of weaknesses. You could have a weapon and amulet Thaumaturge up front who is tanking and attacking. You could have a gun Thaumaturge shooting and taking advantage of Implement's empowerment and exploit vulnerability to still be doing immense amounts of damage. Thaumaturge can do a whole lot. It's a very diverse and very strong class. Next up is Witch, who is going to have the same spread from D tier, where it's just outclassed in its archetype, all the way up to S tier, where it can require special balancing attention. Though I think most witches are going to fall into B tier, where they're simply consistently capable of contributing. Specifically, what's going to separate a witch, you're a prepared spellcaster, so your spell choice can drag you all the way down. Your choice of patron as well is going to drag you all the way to the top or the bottom, as some of these patrons are not at all built equal. Your hex spells are very, very potent, but because they're dependent on your patron, they're not going to be able to raise your floor like something like composition spells do for Bard. They are still very good fallback actions generally, and very capable, very good. But what's really going to make a witch fully come together is being able to utilize your familiar to its fullest extent. You get a lot of familiar abilities, and familiars, especially with Player Core 2, we have a few new abilities that are very good, item delivery, and etc. A familiar can be utilized to save your party a lot of headache, and to some pretty great advantages in combat. And then finally, it has to be said, everyone knows it if you've been around in the Pathfinder community for a while, the Resentment Witch is incredibly, incredibly strong. Being able to extend the durations of negative effects on enemies without any kind of save, just by casting or sustaining a hex spell, is very, very strong. And is going to mean that Witch is capable of excelling. And then finally, we have the Wizard, who is going to range from D tier all the way up to A+ tier for either being outclassed in its archetype, all the way up to consistently capable of excelling. And I think most Wizards are going to find themselves in B tier or A tier. And specifically, this is going to be because of their Arcane School feature. It gives you some granted spells, but the main thing is going to be that you have a 4th spell slot at each rank when you take into account your Arcane School. Your Arcane Thesis, which can provide a lot of unique and powerful benefits, like the ability to put any spell you would like, cantrip or first rank, onto a staff. Things like spell substitution, where if you have a spell in your book that can solve something in 10 minutes, you can solve it. Your Arcane Bond gives you a 5th spell cast at a single rank by being able to drain your Arcane Bonded item to recast a spell you've already cast this day. And ultimately, what's really tying the class together to make it very, very strong is just the 4 slots per level. It's going to be very good. Things like Arcane Thesis for spell blending means that you can get as many as 6 top rank spell slots per day by casting 4 spells, 3 normally, 1 from your school, 1 from your bond, and that 6th one from blending other spell slots together to make another maximum rank slot. Obviously, it'll face the other issues that any caster faces, where depending on if you prepare your spells well, you might struggle to contribute or end up just entirely outclassed. But generally speaking, even though Wizard doesn't have the fallbacks that a lot of other spellcasting classes have, where, for example, things like the Bard's composition cantrips or the Psychic's amped spells they're still so potent in their spellcasting ability that they're going to be able to contribute very well to their party regardless. So, that's everything from me here. I have the full list right in front here. Any concluding thoughts that I have could be summarized as it's been a lot of fun to work on this. More than anything else, more than any direct observation of design or anything I did in particular with this tier list. I really enjoyed being able to plot the maximum, minimum, and average of these classes, and it brought me a lot of joy to be able to see that all of the classes hit at least A tier at their maximum contribution. There really is no class that isn't capable of excelling in this game, even if some of them have their pain points or some are far easier to use. It's truly amazing what the team over at Paizo have put together here. I'm glad to be playing it. I really enjoy this game. I'm looking forward to Starfinder 2nd Edition. I'll be doing some coverage of that when the playtest comes out next month. And I've been really, really happy, honestly, with the remaster project. They warned us going in that this was mostly going to be a legal thing. They had to change names around, reprint everything, get off the OGL for legal purposes, and not to expect too much, but they've nailed a whole lot of things, I think. And despite some personal issues with some of the changes that they've made in some of these books, no class has been overbuffed or nerfed so badly that they're not capable of contributing, and that's amazing to see. No singular class on this list is going to break the game. Not exactly, anyway. If you have a team of very good character builders choosing very strong options and then synergizing them together, that's where you're going to run into some balancing issues. And for things, you know, like Barbarian hitting incredibly high critical hits, Cleric making their party basically unkillable until they go down or run out of slots, things like that. It's very important to kind of keep in mind that these are more of features of the class and benefits that make them excel and are balanced and very fun to engage with, both on the player and game master side of things. And I think that they've struck an incredible balance here. I love this game. I loved making this tier list. And I appreciate all of you for listening through it all with me. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more. And I will see you next time. See ya. See ya.